You are born in the middle of a fire, not a symbolic or metaphorical fire, a real one, the kind that devours rooftops and swallows people's screams. It's dawn when your mother goes into labor, alone, because the village men have fled to the mountains. Those who didn't flee are dead. War came early that year, and with it, the raiders. Your first memory of the world is not a cry. It's the smell of burning wood and sweaty flesh. Your mother lies on straw that reeks of mold and dried blood. The midwife barely arrives in time, stumbling over her own feet, clutching a lantern, trembling like a soaked dog. She mutters prayers to Buddha and local gods, as if unsure who might actually be listening. You slip from your mother's womb between a contraction and a distant explosion. The midwife's eyes go wide, not because of the birth, but because you don't cry. You make no sound. You simply stare at the hut's ceiling as if you already understand that silence here is a matter of survival. Frightened, the midwife gently pats your back. Nothing. Then she leans closer. Try to coax any reaction from you. And that's when you do something unexpected. You stare back. With newborn eyes, you lock eyes with her, judging, knowing. The midwife steps back. Your mother, exhausted, manages a faint smile. She doesn't need to cry to be heard, she says. Your father isn't there. He's on the other side of the village, a broken spear in one hand, pride cracked even deeper. He survived, barely. When he arrives, hours later, still smelling of smoke and blood, he looks at you and simply mutters, "She's going to be trouble." The village agrees. You are a girl, which, in peacetime, would already mean little. But in wartime, it means nearly nothing. Daughters are bargaining chips, political tools, veiled promises, instruments to restore honor between feuding clans. You are that, a possible contract with another warlord, a chance of forgiveness. Still unnamed. You're already considered a resource. Your first blanket is a torn piece of a kimono left behind by a dead samurai. The red has rusted. Your bed is a board over stones, with a folded cloth on top. Around you, the hushed voices of the village's survivors. They murmur prayers, old tales, or just repeat their own names like anchors. Your world begins with the sound of cautious footsteps and the crackling of dying fire. Your mother rocks you in mechanical motions, as if moving a doll. She doesn't sing. There are no more songs in that place. Only the chirping of crickets, the hiss of embers, and now and then, the distant wail of someone who's lost everything. In those first days, no one dares touch you but your mother. You're called strange. The child who didn't cry. The child born between blades and blaze. The oldest woman in the village, named Shimo, says children like you are messengers, but no one knows for whom or what. Your name is chosen by chance. Yuki, your mother says, snow, because at that exact moment, silent flakes begin to fall, even as the ground still smolders with ash. A woman laughs nervously and says, she was born of fire and snow. That's not natural. And maybe it isn't. You survive your first night, which is already more than some others managed. Your mother's milk is strong, enough to keep your eyes open far too long. You don't sleep like other babies. You observe. It's as if you're waiting for your own fate to arrive. On the second day, the men return, the few that remain. They carry dirty axes and hollow eyes. One asks if the child has all 10 fingers. Another mutters that, being a girl, maybe she's not worth feeding too much. Your mother just holds you tighter. At 7 days, a simple ceremony, not a baptism, but a presentation. You are placed before the makeshift altar of the local temple, a pile of stones with a bell on top. The monk prays. You stare at him. He stumbles over his words. For the first time in a long while, someone averts their gaze from a baby. You have no toys, just a carved bone and a braided straw ribbon. Your first bite isn't a food. It's on the sheath of a dagger that fell between the floorboards. Your first fever isn't from the weather. It's from the touch of a warrior woman who passed through the village and pressed her blood and soil-stained hand to your forehead. Your world is made of cracked wood, low ceilings, and voices that whisper of war even when they speak of weather. Your world is steel and silence, unanswered prayers, tired mothers and missing fathers. And you, a small creature with unmoving eyes and a name of ice. You were born in Japan, in the wrong century to be a woman, in the wrong village to expect kindness, in the wrong hour to dream. And still you survive. You didn't learn to walk. You marched with bare feet, stumbling over frozen stones and old bones buried in the mud. You crossed the village like someone searching for an enemy. The other children fled from shadows. You chased them. At age 3, you already knew the names of 4 types of swords, 2 types of silence, and 1 kind of fear, the sound of hooves galloping in the distance. Because when horses came, they came with banners. And when banners appeared, orders followed. And with them, blood. You grew up under the eyes of war. You never knew what spring was. Even when the flowers bloomed, the air still smelled like warm flesh. In the mornings, the village elders dragged bodies to the hill, and you watched, not with horror, but with focus. That's how the world worked, wasn't it? Your mother taught you to sew, but you wielded the needle like a weapon. You stitched in straight, steady lines, like someone piercing armor with precision. When she tried to sing a lullaby, her voice trembled too much. So you grew up sleeping to the sound of the wind shaking the cabin doors and the lament of crows, the only ones who never left. At age 4, you saw a man beheaded for spilling a samurai's tea. His head rolled across the ground like a ripe fruit. You didn't scream. You didn't cry. You simply held your mother's arm and asked, "Did he have a name too?" The following week, your name was struck from the list of future brides. Elder Shimo said there was something in your eyes that wasn't girlish. Your fate, they said, would be different. Perhaps early death. Perhaps glory. Both began with blood. At 5, they gave you a staff. Cedarwood, with sanded tips so it wouldn't hurt too much. For discipline, they said, but you used it to learn weight. And when older boys tried to take it from you, you didn't ask for help. You bit them. The midwife who brought you into the world, now too old to walk, said she saw your soul the moment you were born. It was a blade, slicing through the cold, she repeated. The women laughed. The men fell silent. And you simply watched, as if trying to know who would be your allies and who would die first. Your grandmother, the one who spoke to the dead, told you stories in the smoke. The ancestors see you, Yuki, and they don't know whether to fear you or wait for you. She spat on the floor after each sentence, as if that could keep fate away. But fate didn't leave. It circled you like a hungry dog. You didn't know how to play. You knew how to train. Your first bow was made from stolen fence branches and fishing line. Your first arrow was a sharpened twig. And your first victim was a crow. Not because you wanted to kill it, but because it stared at you like it knew what you were. At 6, your father took you to watch the execution of a traitor, a man who had spoken ill of the daimyo. He was tied between 2 bamboos and stretched until he tore. When the body split, the adults looked away. You didn't. You stared, and then asked your father. He died for words? Yes, he answered, turning his face. Then I must learn to be silent. From that day on, you spoke less, but your eyes said more. At 7, they took you to the temple for a blessing from the monks. One of them, a young one, tried to place his hand on your forehead. You grabbed his wrist. It was the first time the monks interrupted the ceremony due to a bad omen. And then came the harshest winter. Snow swallowed paths would vanish, rice became scarce. Many children died. You didn't. You climbed the hill with a makeshift sled and returned with dry branches and dead fish. You learned to hear the ice cracking before it gave way, and you knew where to step to avoid sinking. You weren't strong. You were resilient. You were sharp. You were wary. One night, you heard your mother crying. That wasn't common. You found her by the altar, burning a piece of paper. What was that? You asked. A request. To the deities? She hesitated. To you. It was during that winter they gave you a new name. One no one spoke aloud. A name only whispered. Yuki no Ana, the woman of the snow. At 8, they gave you a small dagger. Not as a toy, but as a symbol. Use it if someone touches you without permission, said the elder. You tucked it into your kimono sash and never lost it. At 9, a patrol passed through the village. Armed men with the eyes of war. One of them knelt to look you in the eye. "What's your name, girl?" You replied, "Depends." "What's your last wish?" They laughed, but one of them didn't. A samurai with a scar on his face. He didn't smile. He looked at you like someone seeing a reflection of a distant future. And then he said, "She will fight." They didn't know when or where, but they knew. You would not belong to the needlework, nor to the bed of political alliances. You would belong to the field where words died, and only the blade remained. There, even before reaching puberty, your path was already set, and for the first time, you accepted it, with a silent nod. You were 11 when the drums arrived. They weren't beaten in fury, but with method. They didn't announce haste, they announced power. They came from far away, from the dark mountains, carrying with them a certainty. Someone had decided your village no longer deserved to exist. On the morning of the attack, you weren't asleep. You were keeping watch. Climbing the same hill where you used to train alone, now with your makeshift bow slung across your back and the dagger tied to your waist. You weren't part of the patrol, but no one dared to stop you. The sky was too clear. No smoke rose from the enemy camps on the horizon. The silence of the birds was heavy. In the still air, you felt something the adults insisted on ignoring. War was near, and it came with black banners. When the first riders crossed the river, the village men scrambled to organize a defense. Fragile gates, bamboo stakes, improvised shields. But none of that could stop what came with the drums. Did you hide? No. You wore your grandmother's dark cloak, and you came down the hill with a gaze even the trees didn't dare to meet. In the village center, your mother grabbed your arm. "Go to the temple. Now." But you didn't move. Your eyes searched for the old samurai who guarded the village gate. Takeda. He looked back at you with resignation. He already knew there would be no defense, only sacrifice. "She must survive," your mother whispered, crying, and you answered, "I wasn't born to hide." When the invaders arrived, the ground shook. Armed men, blood-stained armor, sharpened spears. They didn't scream. They walked like harvesters. And you were the field. The first scream came from a child, then an old man, and then the silence was gone for good. Yuki, the girl who was never afraid of the dark, saw the world burn for the first time, but she didn't flinch. You ran to the back of the village, not out of fear, but strategy. You knew where the oil barrels were, where the shallow well was, where the invaders would pass, distracted, and it was there, among alleys and smoke, that you discovered what it meant to kill. It was one of the soldiers, young, arrogant. Alone for a moment, you emerged from the shadows like a beast and drove your dagger into the soft part of his neck. He fell without understanding. He didn't even scream. Your heart didn't race. Your breath didn't falter. It was as if something within you, until then asleep, had opened its eyes. You dragged him into a corner, took his spear. His armor was too big, but your rage filled the gaps. As the village screams rose to the sky, you moved like a ghost among the enemy. Quick strikes, ambushes, mud, and blood mixing on the ground. You were too small to be noticed, but deadly enough to be remembered. By the end of the attack, the village was in ruins, bodies scattered, people weeping, but you were still standing. Takeda, the old samurai, crawled wounded when he saw you. He stopped. He stared at the girl covered in blood, holding a spear taller than herself. "Yuki," he said, voice trembling, "you survived?" You approached, kneeled, looked into his eyes. "The earth burns, but the snow remains." He smiled, for the first time. "Then come. We'll teach you how to fight for real." That night, you didn't sleep. You buried the dead, washed the blood, tended the wounded, and when the sun rose with the taste of smoke still in your mouth, you knew you were no longer a child. You were a survivor, an initiate, and your path now was war. You can still smell the wet earth, not from rain, but from blood. You haven't slept well since the attack. The shadows that once protected you now whisper things whenever you close your eyes. The sound of horses, the crackling of fire-devouring wood, and the final breath of someone dying without knowing why. But you don't cry. You rise before the sun and present yourself at the makeshift dojo at the top of the hill. Takeda, the old samurai, is always waiting for you. Even wounded, even limping, he never stops training, nor does he stop watching you, as if tending to a rare seed. "What are you seeking, girl?" he asks, never taking his eyes off the blade he sharpens. You answer without hesitation. "I want to learn how to kill without losing my soul." He smiles. Then you're in the wrong place. The dojo is not a place of honor. It's not clean, not serene. It's a shed with worn-out mats, cracked weapons, and echoes of ghosts still screaming in the beams. Here, they don't teach philosophy. They teach how to survive with dignity. Even when war takes everything, you're the only girl. At first, no one trains with you. Some laugh, others ignore you, but Takeda makes them all watch as you repeat for hours the same cut, the same step, the same breath. Your fingers bleed, your shoulders burn, and the calluses on your feet keep you from sleeping. But you return, you always return, in time when the boys approaches. Hero, he's 14, fast but reckless. He mocks you, but can't beat you even with a wooden sword. One day, after falling for the third time, he yells, "You're not even a girl. You're a little demon." You just get up, wipe the sweat with your forearm, and smile with your eyes. And demons aren't afraid of boys who cry. Takeda laughs out loud. For the first time, you feel like you belong there. In the days that follow, training becomes harsher. Takeda doesn't just teach techniques. He leads you to understand the silence before a fight, the weight of a stare, the strike that's not made with strength, but with perfect intent. The sword, Yuki, he says, is not your servant. It is your truth. If you lie with it, it will lie back. And how do I find my truth? By losing, a lot, and learning not to run when it reveals itself. You begin to lose, often, but with each fall, something inside you straightens. The rage that once moved you becomes something colder, a kind of focus that burns without smoke. 1 month later, Takeda gives you a blunt katana, made of black wood, with a real hilt. What do I do with this? You ask. Sleep with it. Walk with it. Breathe with it. It's no longer a toy, nor a trophy, but it doesn't cut. Not yet. The real one will come when you prove you know how to lose with honor. You understand and accept. One afternoon, Takeda takes you to the river. There, he kneels and opens a lacquered wooden box. Inside, a scroll, a name written in black ink. Your name, and beneath it, a seal. Yuki, recognized as apprentice of the cutting wind, clan of the silent snow. You tremble. That means that now, if you die in battle, someone will know who you were. You hold the scroll. Your body shakes. But it's not fear. It's as if, for the first time, you existed beyond the shadows. Winter arrives. And with it, night training, blades on ice, fights in the dark. You learn to fight barefoot in the snow, to hear someone approaching just by the shift in the air. You learn to control your breath until it vanishes completely, like a deer in hiding. Takeda takes you on hunts, not to kill animals, but to follow them, imitate them, learn how they move. The tiger leaps only when the moment demands. The wolf never attacks head-on. The crane waits. And humans? You ask. Humans make mistakes, but they can choose not to make the same one twice. Rumors begin to spread in the village about the dark-eyed girl who never smiles, about the old samurai's disciple. Some call you a witch, others a divine warning. But you don't care. Your real katana hasn't been given yet, but you can feel it coming. That soon you won't be called to train but to fight again. On the last night before spring, Takeda wakes you with a whisper. Get dressed and come with me. You climb the mount of the old tower. Up there, the sky feels closer. The snow glows under the moon. Takeda drives a stake into the ground. On it, a bundle wrapped in a dark cloth. You recognize it. It's a weapon. The sword that belonged to my daughter, he says, voice heavy. She fought. She died fighting against men who thought she was worth less for being a woman. And was she worth it? Worth more than all of them combined. He gives you the sword. Her name is engraved on the blade. Setsuka, the breeze that bleeds. You lift it with reverence. Am I really allowed? You are, because now you no longer train to fight. You train to lead. You don't reply. You simply plant the sword in the snow. Close your eyes. And listen. Far away, beyond the hills, the drums begin again. But this time, you're ready to face them. The weather has changed. It's not just the cloudy sky that gives it away. It's the air, heavy, thick, dense like the breath of a dying man. The birds have stopped singing. Even the wind seems to respect the village's silence that morning. You walk barefoot across the rooftops, balancing with the lightness Takeda taught you. The breeze carries the smell of fermented plums and fish oil. But there's something else. Iron, fresh blood. You descend from the roof and advance. Silent, like the name they gave you. Yuki, the silent snow. At the elder's doorstep, a dark puddle forms beneath the cracked wood. It's not ink, nor shadow. It's the end of someone you once knew. The man who gave you your first bow lies face down. A clean cut runs across his spine. You kneel, whisper. There was no fight. There was no time. They came at night, not like warriors, but like thieves of honor. They belong to the Iron Serpent clan, says Takeda in his tent. He holds a crude map marked with dried blood. His eyes are red, not from crying, but from restrained fury. The kind of rage old men learn to hide until it becomes necessary. 20, maybe 30. Hired blades. They came for the head of the local daimyo, but passed through our village first. As a warning, he looks at you. Now it's your turn to speak less and listen more. You simply nod. You won't go alone. Hero's going with you, and 2 others. But you lead. The news weighs on you. Will they accept it? They don't have to. They just have to obey. The sun hasn't yet risen when you depart. For silhouettes slip away from the village like shadows escaping the dawn. You carry Setsuka on your back. She pulses gently when you think too much. Hero walks right behind. He seems different, quieter. Maybe because he knows what's coming. Maybe because he fears seeing you fight for real. You head for the northern mountains. Intel says the Serpent Men are camped in a valley near the abandoned temple of Mizuki, a place no one visits since the famine 5 winters ago. That's where the blood will be spilled. You arrive at the site by late afternoon. A thick fog blankets the valley. Smoke mingles with shadows. The smell of roasted pork and cheap sake gives away the invaders. They're relaxed, laughing, some without armor. Fatal mistake. You watch, count the men, plan. We attack before nightfall. You say, wouldn't it be better to wait until dawn? Hero asks. They'll drink by then. Be alert, unpredictable. Right now they're slow and scattered. He doesn't argue, just gets into position. You draw the plan in the damp earth. Mark positions, divisions, whistle codes, just as Takeda taught you. But in the end, when everyone nods and moves out, you stay behind. You close your eyes and touch your sword. This is it. The attack starts with silence. Then a whistle, then a scream. You appear among the tents like a bodiless spirit. Setsuka glows beneath the mist. The first man who sees your eyes doesn't even have time to lift his blade. You slit his throat in one clean motion. The mountain breeze helps hide your step. Hero strikes from behind, taking down another. The other 2 set fire to the enemy's powder barrels. The camp turns to chaos. You move as Takeda taught you. 1 cut, 1 step, breath. 2 men try to surround you. You slip between them, using the bamboo dance. Fluid, lethal. 1 man tries to grab you, but you spin, driving Setsuka into the base of his neck. The other hesitates. That second of hesitation is the last thing he has. The battle ends in under 15 minutes. When the screaming stops, only the 4 of you remain standing. Hero has a wound on his arm, but holds firm. The other 2, bloodstained, stare at you with a mix of fear and respect. You wipe the blade on an enemy's tunic. Look at them. Bury the bodies. All of them. Don't let the vultures do it for us. They obey without protest. On the way back, no one speaks. But there's something in the air. Something new. Respect. You feel in the villagers' eyes as you return. No one smiles. No one celebrates. But everyone bows when you pass. Small, subtle, but deep. Takeda waits for you. Standing. Well, all dead. Did you hesitate? No. Did you cry? Not yet. He nods. And for the first time, he doesn't seem like a master facing his pupil. He seems like an old man looking at a warrior who can never be a girl again. That night, you go to the river. Wash the blade. Wash your face. But the smell of blood still clings to your hands. You close your eyes and smile, not because you liked it, but because you survived. Because now you know that surviving is not enough. It's time to start fighting for something. The days following the Iron Serpent Massacre brought a strange silence to the village. It wasn't peace. It was something else, a kind of waiting, as if the world had held its breath. You notice it in the faces, even the children's. They no longer played in the courtyard, no longer ran through the rice fields. They looked at you as if something in you reminded them that monsters exist and sometimes have the eyes of a woman. You noticed it in Takeda's gaze, too. He spoke less, trained less, spent hours alone before the altar, burning incense and murmuring names of the dead you had never heard. And at night, the temple where you and Hiro slept felt colder, less like shelter, more like a cave. It was on one of those nights that everything changed. We have a new mission, Takeda said, without looking at you. It was rare for him to avoid your eyes. A monk arrived from the western region. He brings news that the Yamagata clan has secretly allied with foreign lords. Firearms are being traded for salt and servitude. And that's our problem? You asked. Not yet, but it will be. He handed you a sealed scroll. Hiro, standing nearby, watched in silence. You too will go to the Haguro Mountains. Follow the river to the ruined temple. There, you'll find the informant. You didn't ask further. But deep down, you felt, this mission isn't just reconnaissance. It's a test. The journey takes 4 days. The northern cold bites your skin again. Hiro speaks little but observes much. On the 3rd day, by a rope bridge, he finally asks, why do you never cry? The question hits a nerve. You almost stumble. Because I haven't needed to. Liar, he says, looking ahead. You don't know how anymore. You forgot. You smile bitter. And you? Why do you still follow me? Because he hesitates. Because I want to see what you'll become. At the abandoned temple, you meet the informant. He's a blind monk, his face marked with scars. He recognizes you by the sound of your steps. You're the daughter of snow, he says, as if he'd been expecting you. The monk gives you names, maps, codes. He speaks of the gunpowder trade, the silent betrayal of the Yamagata, and the imminent arrival of foreign ships on the coast. But then he says something that paralyzes you. Takeda has known all of this for months, and chose silence, because his son is involved. Hiro stiffens. You say nothing. You just listen. Takeda's son, Masaru, is the link to the foreigners. A traitor disguised as a merchant. A son who should be dead. And yet was forgiven. The monk falls silent. Waits. Why are you telling me this? Because Takeda is training you to be more than a sword. He's training you to take his place. And one day, you'll have to choose between the honor of obedience and the truth of doing what's right. On the way back, you don't sleep. You think of Takeda, of Masaru, of everything that was hidden, and mainly what it says about you. You, who believe yourself to be just an instrument, sharp, precise, lethal. But now you know you are more than that. You are a living choice, and choices weigh more than swords. You arrive back at the village 3 days later. Takeda waits at the gate, but the look he gives you is no longer the same. You hand him the scroll. He doesn't read it, just places it at the altar. What did the monk say? He asks calmly. You lie, for the first time. That war will come in waves. That the Yamagata are the first warning. He nods. For a second, he seems relieved. But you see it in his eyes. He knows that you know. That night, you kneel in the center of the temple. Alone, you light a candle. Place Setsuka before you, and whisper, if I were just a weapon, they'd use me without fear. But if they hesitate, it's because they fear what I might cut. You think of Masaru, the traitor who lives while so many innocents died, of the master who chose silence for the sake of blood. You close your eyes and begin to plan. Days later, Takeda calls you for a solitary mission, a kind of trial. Go to the village of Kaminari. There, deliver this scroll to the local leader. He is loyal, but you already know this is a test, perhaps to distance you, perhaps to protect you, or perhaps to quietly eliminate you. On the way, Hiro appears. You're not going alone, he says. What if it's a trap? Then better we have two swords. You smile, for the first time, sincerely. As you depart, the snow begins to fall. White, silent, persistent, like you. And in the distance, as the village fades into the mist, one certainty remains. The next blade you raise may not be against an enemy, but against the one who taught you to fight.